Welcome to the Heart of Dating podcast. Hey, it's Kate. I'm so glad you could join us this week as we try to untangle the ever so ambiguous world of dating as a Christian. Over here on Heart of Dating, we get real as we answer some tough questions and uncover transformative ways to approach Christian dating. Oh, and you better believe we have some laughs along the way, because last time I checked, the struggle is #real. You know what I'm saying? Now, let's get to the heart of the matter. Hey guys, what's up? It's your girl, Kate here, and I am so excited that we have been doing this series because we have been getting the best feedback from you guys. I want to know though, truly, if this is your first time tuning in or you haven't let us know what you thought about this season so far, would you let us know? Would you write a review here on iTunes, or would you personally message us on Instagram or write us an email? That would mean a lot. We really take your feedback into consideration. We really want to hear how this has impacted you in a powerful way. So please, please, please let us know. Now, as a reminder, our vision for this season is to cover ambiguous hot topics for the population of Christian singles in the area of sexuality in an honest and godly way. JJ and I's primary mission is to debunk myths surrounding sex expectations and discovering a healthy, godly sexual ethic as a single, as we also address the roots of unhealthy sexual ethic or toxic sexual ethic and dive into nuanced topics like porn, lust, attraction, and newlywed sex, all from a biblical lens. So far, we have shared our sex story with you, which included both of our pasts and what we did previous to meeting one another to really heal from our past and what that looked like. Then we also talked about the nuanced conversations that JJ and I had in our engagement season leading up to getting married. And then we talked about how it actually went on our wedding night and during our honeymoon. And for those of you with a sexual past, I really want to encourage you to listen to that episode, because we really talked about how it can be so redeeming. Sex in marriage, when you are in a safe and holy relationship, sex in marriage can be so healing and redeeming. So I want you to go back and listen to that episode, because what we share in that story, in that episode about our story, is just so powerful and so healing. So really, really, really go back and listen to that first episode. Last week, we spoke to Gary Thomas, who is a dear friend of ours and a best-selling author of so many books, including The Sacred Search and Sacred Marriage. Both books are so good, and if you are single right now, you gotta order The Sacred Search, okay? Now, Gary laid down and renewed a godly, shame-free foundation of sex for us. For those of you that were brought up in purity culture like me, it is so important to do this healing work to really come back to what does God say about sex and how do we see sex in a healthy, godly way, free of shame. If we don't have a deep why, we're not going to stick to the boundaries that we're trying to set in singleness. So this is so, so, so important. It should not be set based on a rule list of do this and don't do that. So go take a listen to that episode. It is so, so, so good. Now today we have a treat for you, because our best friends in the entire world, Nika and Emeka are coming to the show to share about their journey, okay? And it is so good. You guys, they both have wild stories from their past mixed with a lot of sexual pain and brokenness. And also, they have been on such a phenomenal journey of healing. And today we talked about the reality of sexual trauma and PTSD from sexual experiences in the past, which is a very real thing and a reality for so many people, including myself. And we also talked about that on your wedding night, sometimes sex is not even a reality, or you may have sex, but it might not be this explosive fireworks, amazing, sexy, hot thing that you think it's going to be. Now, JJ and I did share our story related to sex on our wedding night, and it was so redeeming. However, that is not necessarily the case for every person. And we really wanted to highlight that sex in marriage isn't always this perfect fairy tale thing, okay? It's definitely not. And so we really hope that you listen to this conversation today. It is so powerful. Nika and Emeka met in New York City, where she worked as a luxury fashion merchandiser, and he owned and managed Michelin-level restaurants. They moved to the Philippines shortly after getting married to work with and empower women and men who had been rescued from sex slavery. So amazing. After the birth of their daughter, Zion, they launched a family social media brand where they tell authentic, relatable, and inspiring stories about marriage and parenthood while sharing what they love with their audience. You guys, I'm telling you, Nika and Emeka are doing such phenomenal things on TikTok. You need to go and follow them on TikTok and on Instagram. They literally have millions of followers, and they are so authentic with everything that they do. Their content is both moving and hilarious. Like, I get so excited to go on TikTok only to see Nika and Emeka's videos, because I really don't go on TikTok for any other reason. And you just got to check them out. You'll see what I mean once you go check them out. And not only that, but we have so much history with them. Nika is literally my best friend, my soul sister. We go back 10 years in time, and now JJ and Emeka have formed a bromance best friendship, and it is the most incredible thing. So there's so much history there. And Nika and I will share a little bit about our beautiful story of how we met and God's timing and all of that after an abusive relationship. It is just so cool. So we can't wait for you guys to hear from them today. Now, without further ado, let's get into this episode with Nika and Emeka Ihedebo. Wow. Today we have on the podcast my very best friends in the entire world. You guys don't even understand how excited me and JJ are today for this episode with Nika and Emeka. Hi, guys.
Hey. Hi, you guys. Hey, guys. How you doing?
Hey, Caitlin, I might be the only person who calls you that. I am so proud of you and to see you in your element right now. 5 years in the making. This was a prayer and now it's a reality. And the man we've been praying for is sitting next to you. I can't believe it.
It's honestly so surreal. Like, our story deserves its own episode. At some point, we will have to do that, because you guys don't understand. Like, Nika was my co-mate of honor. She has been by my side for the last 10 years. She saw me through the end of the worst relationship and time in my life, and one of the hardest times in her life. And God uniquely brought us together in such a hard season to be the blessing that we both needed to help us heal and get out of those horrible, toxic situations. Just like, and for you to have been, we've been in this journey now of like from brokenness, abusive relationships to meeting amazing men, obviously Emeka, to now sitting here, both living in our purpose and calling, because we're going to have to talk about what y'all do in just a second. And then Emeka, my gosh, and seeing Emeka and JJ now, you guys.
That's my other best friend. JJ.
Yeah, Emeka's my best friend, big brother, grandpa. Like, he's everything in one. Yeah, I'm the Padawan. He's the master sensei. Aww. So it's been amazing. And we tell people all the time, like Nika and Emeka, like, we wouldn't be married if we didn't have them in our life. Yeah. We would not be here today if we didn't have the counsel and the support of you two in the relationship. And of course, we'll never forget the first night we met, which was on Zoom. So we're in a full circle moment.
Literally. Can you just say, just for a brief second, because people don't know our whole story. I can't even believe it. Like, there's so much that people don't know about our stories and how much like our best friendship. And it's wild. I'm like, you guys are just getting introduced to like my people right now, which is so crazy. But would you tell us just a little bit before we get into this amazing episode about the night that you guys met Emeka and like what you said, and Emeka, how you were in the background? I just need them to hear this because it's so funny.
Yeah, we'll hear from Nika and Emeka's perspective.
You know, that night, there was, well, look, I think I'm going to be slightly maybe overly honest. You know, there was a guy that Kate was dating that seemed a little gayish, not really sure what his situation was, because he loved so out loud, right? Yeah. So there was questions, right? And
he was like a sensitive guy who's tapped into her
super
heart.
Super sensitive, right?
Who's passionate? Is he...
Well, you know, and I don't want to play too much with the phraseology, because you know, it's a tough thing when men are categorized incorrectly because they actually are sensitive. And JJ, you're one of the most sensitive men I've ever met, and probably only second to me. All right.
It's true. It's actually true.
But that day was full of tough conversations. Yeah. And I looked you in the eye and I told you a few things that probably would have scared about 99% of men away. And it was beautiful to watch you commit to this young lady with reckless abandon. And it's the only kind of abandon, it's the only kind of situation that God can infuse in a man. It's not, it's not something a man can do and succeed. Many men have said, "Hey, I'll climb Mount Everest," and then they lose their fingers, toes, and all the weirds. You climbed the mountain, you conquered the mountain, but you recognize that you did it with a power that was not yours.
Amen.
And that's the beauty. That's the beauty of what God can do in a man's life. And babe, I'd love to hear a little bit about your take on that day, what your perspective was.
I was not having it. I pride myself on being the gatekeeper of Kate's heart, second to the Holy Spirit. And I've seen too many things. And I prayed to God before she met you, JJ, and I asked him, I was on my knees. Every time she's had a heartbreak, I feel like part of my heart breaks too, because I honestly feel like we're twins. I feel like we're twins in many ways. And I asked God, I said, let this be the last one, the next one. Because Kate, your last breakup, you said tearfully on the phone, I just want to rest. I'm tired. Like, God, you're a God of miracles. Let this be the last one. And so when I was one of the last that you introduced him to, because you sure. And when I got the phone call, I was like totally ready to give JJ the biggest fight of his life. I mean, I came like a, CIA detective, just like ready to go, no mercy. And the last thing I said to you,
JJ, we were planning, I was tasked with planning where to hide your body. So
yeah. Not like we already made our mind up. We were like, we're going to put him through fire because Kate, no one is good enough for Kate. And so when I first met you, I tried really hard to put on like my poker face. And I was like, I'm going to put you through the ringer. Like, this is I'm my sister's keeper. So I'm going to really put you through a hard line of questioning. You're going to have to go through a lot of family members. Kate is secretly, part Filipino because she's my family. My dad's a pastor. Are you ready for this? Because I'm going to put you through some hard stuff. And I'll never forget, JJ said to me with the most beautiful humility, but strength, he said, do your worst. I'm here to stay. And the rest was history. We didn't mean to become best friends on the first phone call, but we did. And yes, I love you. My father, who is, my dad, your wedding.
Dr. Pastor Butch.
Yeah, Daddy Diwa said, the morning of your wedding, I believe, or maybe, no, there was the morning after your wedding with tears in his eyes. I don't even know if he's done that for Emeka or Marcus. No offense, honey. But he did say to me, he could barely say it. He was like choking back tears. He said, that's the son. Like, that's the son I've always wanted. Oh. Sorry, that's awkward for you, Emeka. Like, but
see, that's the son. I'm the black son.
Okay.
Yeah.
He's got both.
He's got both. He's got Italian. He's got Nigerian. He's got.
And one last thing. We have a lot of history, guys. So try to keep up. There's a lot of stuff we're trying to jam into this one podcast. But I did say to Kate, if you mess this up, we're taking him and you're out.
I specifically remember that. I was like, okay, noted. I'm being replaced.
I would happily accept that bargain too, because I love the Diwa family and Papa Diwa, Nika's dad. I feel the same way. He really is the father that I wish I had here on earth. And I do think I'm just so grateful that he was Kate's spiritual father for so long. And it's just so funny. The story between you two, Nika and Kate, has just been wrapped in God's narrative. Yeah. It's had his penmanship all over it. You couldn't manufacture a story like this in your wildest dreams. And so it really has been totally unexpected. That's been a big word for us lately. Yeah. And speaking of unexpected, that is what we're going to be talking about in this episode. Because really, I mean, you go into the wedding night and it's almost like playing Uno. Like, you don't know what card you're going to draw and how it's going to go down. And so
before we do that though, because I can't wait, I want you guys to tell everyone what you're up to, because also, speaking of unexpected, like what God has done in your lives the past like almost 2 years is insane and amazing. And you guys are the most real, hilarious, fun people to watch on the internet. And I can genuinely say this because you guys have to go look them up after this, but you truly are the same. Like the same on all your videos on TikTok as you are in real life. Like you guys genuinely are that funny and that authentic and that real. And I just love it. I love how God has woven your story where that is now what you guys are doing. Like it is just so amazing. So tell everybody what you do really quick.
Yeah, we're digital storytellers online on Instagram and on TikTok. And it started as a platform for me to talk about my postpartum depression and how we almost got divorced after we had our first baby because we were not equipped in the ways that we are today. And so we're so grateful for a platform to be really honest and silly and to promote this amazing platform, Heart of Dating. Everyone always gets so excited. There's a significant portion of my DMs that say, Kate Tomlin. I'm like, I know too much about Kate Tomlin.
I know everything about her.
I know all the things.
We knew Kate Tomlin when she was platinum blonde and fur coats.
Yeah,
exactly.
That's the Kate Tomlin we knew.
Well, they say fashion is cyclical, so we'll just have to see when that comes back.
Oh, JJ's helping for it, okay.
Well, and for Nika and Emeka, I think what I love about what you guys do, it's the definition of what God has given you to steward to his glory and his purpose, whatever it looks like. And what Nika and Emeka won't say is they have a massive, massive following. And if this is how God works in 2022, 2023, where Christian couples who walk in wisdom and purpose, who have millions of followers now on the internet, and that's how he gets to speak about his story, and that's how he gets to exemplify what coveted marriage looks like, what a husband who loves and supports and cherishes his wife looks like. Half the time I'm laughing and crying at your videos because they're funny, and the other time I'm just crying and I'm challenged because I just see the way that Emeka loves his bride, and it's so foreign to the cultural eye. It is an enigma, the way he cherishes and asks questions, and how Nika's feelings and emotions are never too much. And that is from a Christian lens, where that's like my standard. Imagine that times 10 for a cultural standard that's never even seen that exemplified in a marriage. Babe. And so they're doing that on TikTok, on Instagram. Give them a follow, and you will not regret it.
It'll be the best part of your days, okay?
I know.
You're the highest in my algorithm. Every time I get on my phone and you post something new, I'm like, it always shows up, and I love it.
Sir, you're the number one on everything. It's always, whenever you post, I'm the first one who sees it. It's funny because for anyone who does follow us, you should see where we started, okay? Don't be deceived, and I guess we'll get into that.
Yeah, exactly. Because it takes a lot of work to where, even in the dynamics that you guys are now showcasing, even in your marriage and in your relationship and being parents. So, okay, today we're talking about the truth about sex on your wedding night. And because a lot of people have, especially Christians, Christians who specifically have waited to have sex till marriage, there is this a lot of people's mentality is I've waited, and therefore on my wedding night, it's going to be so sexy and so wild and so amazing and so connected, and immediately the switch will turn on and everything will flow and be awesome. And the reality is sometimes it happens like that, sometimes. But a lot of times and a lot of stories are not like that. And especially for women, I think, that have been abused, and men who have been abused as well, or for women or men who've been deeply indoctrinated in the purity culture and a lot of shame. a lot of times sex in the beginning is not wild and amazing or even enjoyable at all. And there can be a lot of fear and there can be a lot of shame. And so we're going to talk about all that. I know you got your guys' story and it's just so encouraging. And so I want to start by setting the stage and here first, I want to hear about what it was like on your wedding night. But before that, I want to know, like, what were the expectations you both had, like individually or even together, about sex on your wedding night?
I love to tell the story, Kate. You probably know which one I'm going to tell because I feel like it just sums up everything in a really short anecdote. So I had been in 6 years of abusive relationships, all kinds of abuse on the entire spectrum before I met my husband. So he was my first healthy relationship, right? So I didn't know how to receive love that is pure and kind and unconditional and selfless. And so I was very skeptical. And because I was so nervous and skittish and hesitant and scared, Emeka made a leadership decision that is not a blanket thing that he believes every man should follow. But for us, he wanted to show me other ways to be intimate other than physical, because I'd basically experienced too much physical in all the years of my dating. And so he made a boundary for us that we would not be alone unless someone else was there, just so that I could feel fortified and safe. And I didn't realize until he made that boundary that I really needed it. Yeah, at that time. And we were a month out before getting married and engaged. And we went back to my apartment, but my roommate who was supposed to be there wasn't there. And so he refused to come inside the apartment. And it really triggered me because I felt like up until that point, I had been believing the lie that sex was a currency for affection and that I had to perform and prove myself. And so I translated him not coming into the apartment as he thinks I'm too much, or I'm not good enough, or I'm not beautiful enough, or fill in the blanks, right? And so I had a total tantrum, freaked out. Anyways, I didn't understand why he stuck to that conviction until like a week later, we were sitting on my couch and he was tickling my foot and touched my ankle in a way that reminded me of my ex, who used to drag me across the floor by my ankles if I didn't want to go somewhere that he wanted me to go. He was really domineering in that way and very physically and sexually abusive. And in that moment, I had my first major PTSD episode where in the community of people who are survivors of abuse, we call it, you just see red, logic goes out the window, your cerebral cortex just shuts down and your amygdala just like everything fires up in your brain. And in that moment, it was my ex in front of me, not my loving, kind, steadfast, faithful fiance. And I hit Emeka thinking he was my ex really hard. And it was humiliating. And I remember I gave back the ring and I said, I get it. I'm too broken. Please just leave. I'm so embarrassed. And he said to me, he picked me up off the floor and gave me back my ring and said to me, if for the rest of our life, all we can do is just hold hands, I choose you over and over again. And so that really set the stage for my expectations going into the honeymoon. As you can imagine, if even being touched on the ankle was very triggering for me, you can imagine the fear that was in my body and in my heart, and just all the feelings of inadequacy that I brought with me into that honeymoon space. You can only imagine.
Yeah.
So I feel like that kind of sets the stage.
Yeah.
Wow.
Well, from that telling, I sound pretty cool, actually.
Yeah, you do. You sound like a Marvel character.
But the reality of the fact is, no less a scoundrel than the worst of them. In truth, I've had a really conflicted and tumultuous past, and so much so that even before I met Neeks, I got to a crossroad where, I had to choose life or death, and it wasn't death. In a way where, you die and you get to come back and do it all over again. It was, it was just a profound finality that the Lord sort of presented. And it wasn't a punishment, it wasn't a threat. The Lord was like, this is the way you've been living your life. And he kind of showed me who I was in totality, in the full force of it. And it was so powerful because there was only one thread left. And that thread I had to hold on to. And that thread was all of it, and it was everything. So holding fast to that thread, it gave me more wisdom than I had ever beheld in my entire life. It gave me more steadfastness. It gave me more grace. So I was in the Word every day, and the Lord just began to lead me and lead me and lead me. So even as she tells the stories, it wasn't my wisdom; it was that thread that I was holding on to, and that thread began to shape and mold me and turn me into a person that I didn't even recognize. But you go so deep into your relationship with the Lord that the old you can't recognize anymore. So I'm in this perfect space in between where I have no choice but to just follow what the Lord is telling me.
Right.
So coming into the wedding night, the Lord just said, hey, be calm. I'm going to show you some stuff. And I was like, really? He was like, no, not like that.
Not like that.
I'm going to show you some stuff. And so I was ready for the unexpected, but I was in a holding pattern, and I was just waiting on the next instruction from the Lord.
It's so good. So did you even expect to have sex on your wedding night, Emeka?
To be honest with you, no. I said to my wife, I said, hey, look, maybe we just take a bath together. Maybe that's all we do.
So sweet.
I'm very sweet. You guys are going to make me cry.
So what we want to know, how did that go? What happened on the wedding night? There's so much leading up
Like what actually happened.
And
we haven't talked about this in 7 years?
I don't think we've ever talked about it since then.
I know. I remembered the story though. But
we talked to you guys. I don't think we've talked about it since then. I actually started and picked a little bit of a fight with you at the end of our wedding. I don't know if you remembered. I got a little sassy because I was basically trying to do everything I could to prolong the honeymoon situation. And then after our wedding, I said to my godparents who were driving us to our hotel, I said, can we stop by Whataburger?
That's right.
Really, really long. And I said, perfect. So very nervous. And we finally got there, and my heart was beating out of my chest, and I was feeling so insecure. And I went and got dressed because I had this whole outfit planned, but I was not feeling sexy. I was feeling very insecure. And Emeka, when I came out of the bathroom, you were so calm. You were just so steady the whole time. And I said, I'm hungry. And you said, okay, well, would you like to have a picnic on the bed? And I said, yes, let's make it a really long picnic. So I remember you took the water, put it out like a spread on the bed, and I ate really slowly.
You're like,
Mecca's like, are you okay?
And when the final crumb of the chicken tender was gone, I was like, oh my God. And so I got under the blanket on the far opposite side of the bed. And I just remember you just said, let's talk. And I'll never forget. I go, so how was your day? This is our wedding day. Okay? So have a good day. And I remember over the course of several hours, we started on the opposite ends of the bed, and then we slowly just inch by inch until we were closer together. And I did really want to try to actually engage in full intimacy with you because God really already impressed upon my heart being in the Word, and I just felt ready. And you never pressured. You kept just being such a gentleman the entire time. but it was just so awkward. And I remember like it hurt, physically hurt, but I just remember feeling like I have never experienced this kind of awkwardness and safety, and me feeling like I didn't know what I was doing, but you stayed steady the entire time. And I don't even know, honestly, if it was like, maybe some people even could say that you didn't have full sex the first night. I remember it hurt, so I know that it was something, but I know also my body was completely tense. And you have to remember also, for those who are listening, that before Emeka, I was sexually active at an extremely young age. And I was forced by in some pretty depraved circumstances. I don't want to say depraved men, because people who did what they did to me were also victims of abuse in their own right. But they would force me to do things that they had learned and wanted to emulate from pornography. So I learned a lot of quote unquote hot tricks and some crazy things that were, to the world, impressive. But if someone who is young and doesn't actually have intimacy is trying these things, it's very damaging and confusing and goes against what true intimacy designed by God looks like. And so I was very out of my element, because I was used to being, by the world standard, a sex expert. Like, I was giving advice to people about how to, like, we went there. And now I'm realizing, oh my gosh, nakedness is not the same thing as vulnerability. Oh my gosh. And in that space, I was completely inexperienced.
So good.
Wow.
Yeah, what about, I'm so curious about
So
what your
good.
was. I don't remember actually hearing this from your side of the story, so I'm nervous, but let's go.
I recall the picnic. It was divine. To be honest with you, I didn't notice the time. Every moment with you was a joyful eternity that I could have stayed there forever. And the conversation was extraordinary, and the cadence that we were moving, I was like, "Ooh, what's she up to? Is she coming up?" Because, no joke, my love, I was, there's so much in a wedding that is miraculous. I still don't know how I paid for it all. We had an extraordinary suite. Like, that suite was sweet. And I'm looking at this extraordinary room, this like penthouse room that we had. And I was like, how did you do all of this? I was just so perfectly aligned with just gratitude and grace that anything could have happened. Anything could have happened, and I would have, I don't think it's a matter of silver lining, but my joy was just bursting. So my expectation was, hey, let's have an awesome conversation, because, oh my goodness, after all of these mofos in my face all day, all of the energy, all of the pageantry of this celebration, which I enjoyed, right? The wedding went down the way that we wanted to, and it was good. But it was like, I just get to be with my best friend. So there was no expectation. There was no, burning, passionate desire. I must taste that food.
Could you tell that I was scared?
I could tell that you were nervous. I could tell that you were scared. I could tell at moments that you were terrified. But again, I'm holding on to this thread, and as I'm holding on to the thread, it was like Ratatouille, the Lord just like, and he was like, do this. He was like, do this.
Oh, like Ratatouille. You
I
can
love
tell
that.
you have a little girl. Ratatouille. I love it.
Great movie.
Oh my gosh, so good. But that's so, and that's the thing, is that there is a lot of the reality that there is a lot of anxiety and fear sometimes for people about their wedding night or leading up to it, based on whatever expectations they have or whatever happened to them in their past. And like, and you had done a lot of healing, but like same with me, but I still, like for me, and you got married sooner after everything you had experienced than for me. It was like years and years later. So I had even more time in singleness to really heal in singleness, but there was still like some levels of anxiety and mainly nerve-sidedness, but there is like, oh my gosh, like what? And I think that is normal. Like, I think we should talk about how that is totally okay if you have some anxiety and fear. And, but within that, whoever does have the anxiety, oftentimes it is women, but guys may as well. What is the role of the other person to not have and impose the specific expectation of like sex needs to happen? Because even though you guys did do or have sex to an extent on your wedding night, you very well may have not. And some people don't, right? And then they feel like they're a failure afterwards, or there's something wrong, or their whole connection is off, or like, should I even gotten married? Like, does this person even want me? Mm-hmm. Which is such an awful no. Like, just because you don't have sex on your wedding night, or just because it's not the most mind-blowing sex of your entire life on your wedding night, or even on your honeymoon, because we can talk about that. Like, it doesn't mean that this isn't a beautiful, godly, ordained union. And there should be space for us to be able to have like realistic expectations. There should be space for us to work through the fear and work through the anxiety.
We all have been sort of pervasively permeated by these ideas about sex. Yeah. I think it's fair to say societally, and I don't want to cast aspersions on that company that starts with D and has the mouse, but they've sold us a lot of ideas about intimacy and the idea of happily ever after. So It's almost like I have sex happily ever after. I get married happily ever after. Right. And all of these things. So there's all these happily ever afters that we expect. But when you come to that bridge and you cross it and you're now at the other side of the bridge, you can't go back. And you're like, right. Holy heck, there is no happily ever after. Yeah. Actually, what there is a vast wilderness, and I don't know what direction to go into. So, right. That was something that my wife and I definitely dealt with. Having to, the Lord sort of held a lot of that stuff at bay in that space. It was like it was just almost like, it was such a divine nest, like a nest that the Lord had just placed us in, where all the troubles of the world, right, because we were obedient, had been sort of set aside. I could tell you, as we began to live our lives, we had to revisit a lot of those issues and challenges, and have to really confront the fairy tale ideas versus reality. And part of what has hurt us the most was the expectations that these things shouldn't be happening. When, if you know Jesus, you know the difficulty. The truth is they should be happening, and getting through the difficulty is what allows you to grow.
That's right.
Hey guys, it's your girl Kate here. You can see Lovey here in the background. She's our little guest if you're watching here on YouTube. I want to tell you today about wild grain. Now, there's nothing like the smell of fresh baked bread coming out of the oven. Am I right? Seriously, it smells so good. And now I know there's some of you out there who have been really ambitious and tried to make your own homemade bread. But what if I told you can get all of the deliciousness with none of the time or work involved to create homemade bread? Well, you can from Wild Grain. Wild Grain is the first ever bake from frozen subscription box for sourdough breads, fresh pastas, and artisanal pastas. Unlike typical supermarket bread, Wild Grain uses a slow fermentation process that's easier on your belly, lower in sugar, and rich in nutrients and antioxidants. Every bake from frozen item cooks in 25 minutes or less. It is so, so, so good. Now, all you have to do is sign up for wildgrain.com/heart and choose which type of box you want to receive and how often. It is super easy to reschedule or skip or cancel. And let me tell you, me and JJ have loved having Wild Grain because it is perfect for when you're having friends over. It's perfect for a date night. It's perfect just if you want to make an amazing meal for yourself as a single person. I'm telling you, the bread is insane. Now, for a limited time, you can get $30 off your first box plus free croissants, ooh la la, in every box when you go to wildgrain.com/heart to start your subscription. You heard me right. That's free croissants in every box and $30 off your first box when you go to wildgrain.com/heart. That's wildgrain.com/heart, or you can use the promo code HEART at checkout.
The cultural expectation sets us up for nothing but disappointment.
Mm-hmm.
It promises the world and it delivers nothing.
And there's this expectation, which we don't have to get all into, but I think for a lot of people that have waited until marriage to have sex, whether they have a past and then recommitted themselves to waiting, or whether they've waited their whole life, on their wedding night, it's like there's this expectation that now I deserve, or it should be, all of these things. And there is a reality that sex can be hard and difficult and nuanced. And it is, especially inside of marriage, it's not what people picture within the movies, like where it's like, which is so unrealistic with so much of it, because it's like all of a sudden in a moment I look at him across the room and then all of my clothes fly off, and then it's like, and then afterwards we just cuddle together and we fall perfectly asleep. I'm like, what? In what world is that what happens all the time? Like what?
Right.
And you know what? I'm going to go ahead and say the thing that you're not supposed to say, but pornography plays a huge part in that. And in the Christian community, I know that a lot of people are listening to this and they're like, oh my God, did she see my history, my browsing history? Hey, we struggle with this in the Christian community too. And not just men, women too, and at a very early age, I was forced to, again, emulate some images that were really not realistic at all. And so not only are we jousting with what looks like soft pornography on Netflix and, just not even porn sites, but then there's this wide spectrum of, actual pornography that is so accessible on phones. And that entire thing, society's expectations, it's so unrealistic. You see this woman who has barely met this person and all of a sudden they're just having mind-blowing sex. And it's not, God says in the Bible that I designed you, intricately wove you into this beautiful tapestry. And we love the way that sounds, but then in the honeymoon, we get frustrated that it takes time to unwrap and unravel. And you get frustrated. Why can't I have this totally free, uninhibited sex? And God is like, because you are intricate and I made you for pursuit. And so you are designed to be peeled back layer by layer. You're designed to be taken on dates, for the man to learn your love language and vice versa. And the more you do that, the wilder and more uninhibited sex is.
Yes. I was listening to an interview recently that said the people with the best, it was researchers, John and Julie Gottman, who are incredible researchers and therapists, counselors. And they said a study was shown that the people that have the best sex lives, it has nothing to do with like performance or positions or like all those things, even though that can make things fun. It has everything to do with other types of connection. So the people with the best sex lives like affirmed each other consistently, had what they are big on are bids for attention, had consistently active or positive bids for attention, which they say 8 out of 10, you should accept 8 out of 10 bids for attention. They had a curiosity about their partner. And so those three things, just even those, appreciation and affirmation, bids for attention, and what was the last one? Curiosity. Those were more of a predictor for healthy sex life than anything else in couples. And it was like, these couples were like, yeah, I mean, and it was like they could be having quote unquote vanilla sex. Okay, I'm saying vanilla, but like basic. But for them, it was like so connected. It doesn't have to be necessarily all of this
Isn't that
crazy
amazing?
stuff. And I heard that, and that's based on research. And I was like, oh my gosh, we are wired to be pursued. Like that's how God wired us. And so within that, I want to just transition for a moment to talk about PTSD in women specifically. In this narrative in the church, that women, they have to sit through sex because it's the duty of them as a woman to do this for the man. I need to please my husband. I have to have sex with him. I don't enjoy it at all. But as soon as he looks at me and he wants it, all right, I got to do it. And there's so many women that have, especially in your case, like in my case, past abuse, that this is just reinforcing a past narrative of abuse. Like I have to do whatever he wants whenever he wants it. And also, there's so many nuanced layers that also like that sex is only meant for male pleasure, which is also completely skewed. So I'd love to just hear your guys' thoughts on this, because it is a narrative that many women believe, like, oh, I'm not going to enjoy this and I just have to do this because it's going to satisfy the man.
Yes, absolutely. Can I start this one? And I'd love to bounce it off to you, babe. You know, when you are a survivor of abuse, what happens when you're in that cycle psychologically is you are taught to shut your mouth, to silence your voice. And so when you are in a healthy relationship, you've got to train yourself to get out of that cycle and open up your mouth and say what you need to say. And a healthy sex life takes a lot of communication, albeit it may be awkward, right? And so when you're experiencing PTSD, you're believing a past narrative that's telling you, shut your mouth, don't speak. And a lot of the time, from a woman's perspective, we put so much blame on the past and our husband when we have found challenges starting from our honeymoon. You said, honey, you never told me you needed that. I never opened up my mouth because I was taught for so long to silence it. So yeah, I'd love to hear your perspective, like PTSD as my husband.
You're not allowed to have a voice or an opinion or say no. Like you're not allowed to say no.
Because it's really, it's not about you.
No, right.
In this moment at all.
Your perspective, because
well, I hate to overuse an analogy, but you know, here comes the thread again. You know, my wife's situation in her past, you know, readily aware and knowing that it's something that we had to be sort of delicate about. But the Lord kind of took it many, many steps beyond that and was like, hey, look, I have to reveal some stuff to you. And through some of the healing and the discussions and the exploration that we went through, one thing that we introduced it early on was like, there is no demand. There's no necessity. It doesn't matter how long it takes. We're going to take as long as it takes. The only thing that I'm asking in earnest is that we continue to have conversations.
Yes.
That we continue to have conversations, that it isn't just something that we're throwing to the wayside and putting off. We're dealing with it the way that the Lord's going to lead us. And what the Lord did, he took me actually down a road where a lot of stuff that was lodged in the past that I had never even in my adult life even been aware of, i.e. I was molested. It didn't even register. And then the history of being a bald, skinny Black man where women used to say, oh, you're beautiful, but beautiful wasn't you're beautiful. Beautiful was you're a sex symbol. You're a tool for my pleasure. You're a performer, right? And I would get these white girls who would say stuff to me like, oh, I've never been with a Black guy before. Mm-hmm. Like, First words out of their mouth, standing in the bar, never been with a Black guy. And there's this moment where the world says, oh, I'm the man, I'm great, I'm this, but I just couldn't explain that little death that I was feeling each time I had to go through that. And once I got into a relationship with my wife, that became very evident and very clear. And what happened was the Lord sort of just paced us just right.
Yeah.
We were on the same trajectory. We were on the same pace. And it meant, let's go slow. There's portions of our marriage where we couldn't have been more intimate with one another, yet we were only having sex probably once a month.
Yeah, there was a season. My PTSD as a woman gave him permission to explore his PTSD as a man.
Yeah.
Wow. Wow.
And I think what I just hear permeating from your story, from the very beginning to even this moment, is just, it's almost like there's no expectation except for the God expectation of Ratatouille. Holy Spirit. Seriously. Holy Spirit, what's the pace? What do you want? What is the best according to you?
Yeah.
And that's also called wisdom. Right. That's called wisdom of just leaning on the Ratatouille and guidance. And it's almost like, if we had to sum up your story, the best expectation for your wedding night and intimacy is no expectation. And it's a mindset of, God, what do you have for us? The last thing I want is my agenda. The first thing I want is to please you.
Amen.
Can I ask you guys one more question on this topic? Because it's just coming up. But I know the intimacy or the intimate details of your story, because you guys are my best friends, right? So I'm just remembering, and I've just walked with you guys on this journey, especially Uniques. And so I think there are many people listening that are like, maybe even people married, or people are like, I have some abuse in my past and I'm nervous about how long it may take me to actually enjoy sex or connection with my spouse. I don't know if you want to speak into that or normalize some of that, because I think there is like, there's a permission to say it's okay if it takes time. There actually also may be many women as well that it actually really is painful outside of just the trauma, but just like it's painful. It might take some time to even be okay with that and enjoy it. But also it might take time for sex to feel safe in the intimacy, even with as much healing as you've done before marriage. There's still different layers that come up, like that you can't fully prepare for. Like there's just different things in marriage that it's like, whoa, I've prepared all that I could. And then there's that. And what about this? And didn't see that one there, And so there's new things that potentially will need more healing.
I love how Tim Keller says, I've been married to 7 different women and they've all been my wife.
Yes.
That's true for your sex life too. When I say that, I mean, there was honeymoon Nika, there was Nika who was pregnant, and then there was Nika postpartum who was struggling with depression and just hormones were not permitting any sex to happen. And then there's the Nika now who has been married for 7 years with her husband for 9 years, who last night got into a fight over sex with her husband, because for the first time I'm feeling liberated and my sex drive has gone up. And sometimes he's tired and wants to rest. And I felt rejected.
Yeah.
So that was a new layer that we had never experienced before. Usually it's, honey, I'm so sorry that I can't give you sex more frequently. And now it's like, you're saying no. And so I say all that to say, my loves, it's a journey. It's a journey. Yeah. You are going to be different today than you were on your honeymoon night. And you got to give yourself and your spouse permission to let sanctification do its thing in all aspects, including your intimate life. Mm-hmm. That was last time we got in a huge argument, and that lasted till 3 a.m. And we're so grateful to follow up on sex. Yeah.
Well, I'd like to say Tim Keller had 7 women that he was married to, and I've had 50 and counting.
So like every 3 months. About
virgin.
The truth of the matter is there's too many layers to count. But all are accounted for.
Amen.
And can only be accounted for if you're plugging into the source. Now, we're in a new place where, I just want you to sort of bounce back to, the world, there's a popular school of thought that says, human beings are not created for monogamy because monogamy can just be too boring. What? There's nothing boring about where we are. We've been 7 years, 8 years, 9 years in the making, and the excitement is literally just beginning to burst at a level that is like, it's unbridled and it's beautiful. And we're so excited to see what is next and what God is doing next. Our communication is getting stronger and stronger, yet we stumble and we fall and we skin our knee figuratively. And, and then add to it, there's anatomical challenges. When you don't have sex for a little while, oh my goodness, there might be some bleeding or some pain. And, so you have to traverse those things. And it's like, hey, look, this Rubik's Cube of sex can never get all the colors just right unless you're going to the source. And we continue to go back to the source, and that difficulty, that challenge that we had last night that lasted till 3 a.m. What my natural spirit said, talk about the way you're hurt and talk about this and talk about that. But holding on to that thread said, hey, grab a hold of her feet and massage her feet. Sit there and tell her that she's loved and that there's no challenge that can confront you that we're not going to get through. And I'm happy to wait as long as it takes. And the moment that I submitted to that, right back on frequency, right back, Ratatouille's back on my head. And he said, hey, you're not getting it tonight, but there's a night soon that, that's going to curl those toes up.
Amen.
Amen.
Right. And I want to say one thing. I think that Christians on their honeymoon night, if we focused more on learning how to laugh in the bedroom, just learn how to laugh, not take each other so seriously, but give each other space, learn how to laugh instead of focusing so much on being sexy. That's actually the best way to go about it.
Yeah.
Yes.
I love it.
That's so true.
It is true.
We have to learn to laugh. And part of it is going to be awkward. And it's going to be like, hey.
That's part of there's a Instagram account called Christians Who Curse Sometimes. And their latest theme lately is like Christian men on their honeymoon night. And they just talk about, they use River Monsters, the history TV show. And it's pretty funny. And it's
so
very
funny.
much centered on just laughing about it instead of, the awkward other version of incredibly serious and trying to be sexy. So, okay. So here's what I would say. What's very clear is in your story, your testimony, God has just woven so many lessons, and that's a testimony to be shared. And that's the platform that you guys have been given to steward. Now, that being said, because I know you guys probably wouldn't change anything per se. However, let me throw a hypothetical out there, okay? You guys just wrapped up your Whataburger feast. You're sitting there, locking eyes, kind of starting to think about what's coming. And you have to say, 1 second. You go outside real quick and you have you today right there. And you can give yourself one piece of advice. You can go back in time right before, the feast of the feast. And you give yourself one piece of advice for marriage about sex. What would you guys go back and tell yourself?
What I would say to myself is he means it when he says he's not going anywhere. That's a big thing I needed to know. And it was attached to everything else, which is funny because actually, as I said that, I realized full circle that is when I knew you, JJ, were the man for Kait, is when you said, do your worst. I'm here to stay. And so perhaps something in women that God put, that is really designed for a pursuit that is ever faithful, because I think something that God designed in us that unlocks intimacy when we realize that we are worth fighting for.
It's so good. I just got goosebumps from that answer because it was just so wrapped in Holy Spirit and God's just design. So awesome.
If I could speak to that fellow, I'd say, two things, right? I'd probably give a 30 to 45 minute dissertation because that's what I mean, over on the difference between pouring into someone and expecting to get something out of it. And I'd go through the biblical examples of that, and he would probably gloss over and be like, what the heck? But the most important thing that I would say is like, hey, that thread you're holding on to, don't ever let it go.
Wow.
Amen.
You guys, we could literally talk for a whole nother hour on this whole subject and our stories and so many details. But I think what you guys shared today both gives people permission to still be in process of healing, especially as they enter into marriage. And honestly, it's like the theme of the unexpected. It's like, just be prepared for God to do the unexpected, and it doesn't have to be a bad thing. If sex on your wedding night is very unexpected and isn't exactly what you thought it would be, that is okay. Like, God is going to use that and work through that. And there is hope for continued healing. And that is the beauty of a healthy marriage dynamic, like of a healthy marriage union. It's like you can continue to be in process, and there's space to continue to heal throughout your entire journey. That's what it should be.
Mm-hmm.
And so I just feel like today you guys gave people so much permission to breathe when it comes to their wedding night. You know, it's like, man, I don't have to maybe be so locked into all this fear and anxiety of what it should be. So if you are getting married, I hope that both of you guys listen to this episode. I think it would be really, really good for you to pass this along to your fiance. And if you're not engaged, I hope this does help you to release some of the fear and expectations you had around sex on your wedding night.
Yeah, I love it. We're so grateful for you guys. Your story, every time you tell any aspect of your story, I'm challenged, I'm inspired, I'm encouraged to go to the common thread, to listen to the Ratatouille Holy Spirit, on top of my head. It's also funny that Emeka's bald, because you guys must have a special system, like a tap system, but
Well, the hair's there, but they've all been pulled out. The Holy Spirit.
That's a great way to put it.
I love that's funny, you guys. Oh my gosh. A new inside joke.
I know.
yeah,
I love that.
you can see how spiritually mature and obedient Amin is by how many hairs he's lost in his head. Okay.
We love you guys so much. Thank you for sharing your story today and for being so honest and vulnerable about all sorts of details, even details that you guys haven't shared or even with each other, from the very beginning.
Well, it's a joy. It's anytime. I feel like this is just our conversations, except
like every day.
This was being recorded. Honestly, this is just what we do.
Yeah. Well, we love the unexpected, and God always writes a better story that we could always, or it could ever manufacture on our own.
Mm-hmm.
And that is the friendship between us, the bond that we hold, that we just have nothing but gratitude for. We have no response other than just to praise the Lord for a relationship like this.
Yes,
There's just no other posture we can take except just true humility and gratefulness. So well, we
also,
love you guys.
Plug for Godly Community, you guys. We literally could not have made it without this couple. And there's so much more to that story. We'll have to maybe have you guys on again. But it's so important to have Godly Community like this in your life and in relationships. So we love you guys. Hey, if you're listening, you have to go right now and check out Nika and Emeka. Go to Nika Diwa on Instagram and TikTok, and you'll see what I mean. Be prepared to laugh till you cry, and actually maybe cry from so many of the amazing, fun, and sweet videos that they have going on.
It's definitely one of those profiles that like you go and check out a video from Explorer somebody sent you, and then you're just scrolling for 5 minutes.
I know, like
10 minutes.
We love you guys.
More.
The Heart of Dating podcast is created by Kate Warman. It is a part of the Converge Podcast Network. Our incredible editor is the one and only Scott Caro. Our theme music was developed by the amazing Christian Ledoux. If this is your first time listening to the podcast, or if you've never written us a review or ranked us on iTunes, we'd encourage you to do so because it helps us so much to get this podcast into more people's ears. We launch our podcast each and every week on Wednesdays, so we'll see you next week.
This show is part of the Converge Podcast Network.